all for joining us today. We are here with Kayla Sparks.
Thank you for
Welcome.
having me.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
So, Kayla, I first wanted to ask, when did you first discover professional wrestling?
Since I was 3 years old, I was a huge fan of wrestling. Back then it was Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, and those guys. So right away, I know that's so young. Then as a kid, I watched wrestling growing up, the Attitude Era. China was a huge influence for me, definitely. And, Undertaker, and I watched a lot of WCW, and Sting was my favorite. So it was a great time.
And it's amazing to hear you with because we grew up in the same era and watching the same things.
Yeah.
Do you have a specific match or memory that just had an impact on you?
Oh man, there's so many, right? Man, I would say off the top of my head, the one that sticks out is the Hell in a Cell with Undertaker and Mankind. Just because I had so many crazy moments in the match, and I remember being as a kid watching it on my VHS tape, and just being so amazed with the theatrics and the athleticism and everything that goes into wrestling. It was awesome. That was one of my favorite matches.
Now, thinking back, when did you know that you wanted to be a professional wrestler?
So I mentioned China. She was always my favorite, huge inspiration for me. I actually got to meet her, was it 2001, when she was doing her autobiography signing for If They Only Knew. And I just remember she was so sweet. She was so kind to me. My mom was there. She was so nice to me. And I'll always remember China was a big influence on me, not just for her wrestling, but just being different out there and just being her own person. And that was a huge influence on me as a kid, because in school I would get bullied a lot, and China was the one for me that I could look up to and be she's strong, she's beautiful, outside and inside. So she was always a huge influence for me to get into wrestling.
That's amazing. And tell us about your experience with WWE.
So I know that's surreal still that you even asked that question. So WWE has always been my dream since I was a kid. And my first experience was February 2022. I got called to do extra work for Hershey. It was in Hershey, Pennsylvania at SmackDown. And the producers came up to me and they said, "Hey, we have a spot for you for the Los Lotharios Kiss Cam." I was like, "Oh my God, that's awesome." So that was my first, WWE time there. And everyone has been so amazing there. It's like a dream. Like I said, being there, talking to everybody there, all the wrestlers and producers. And it's a dream come true to finally be able to say that. So.
Absolutely. Now, tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got into wrestling.
So that's a good question. So it was on the news one morning. It was a professional wrestling school in my hometown, Schenectady, New York. And they said, "Hey, we're doing, students that want to join our school." And I was 13 at the time. That's super young. And I remember my mom told me about it on the news, and I said, "Oh my God, that's my dream come true." I'm like, "Can I please?" I was begging my parents to join. And, they were worried about me getting hurt and stuff. So, but, once I joined, Chip Stetson was the main trainer there. And I always refer to Chip as my wrestling dad, because he's known me since I was 13. So he brought me in, learned the ropes, and it was just such a family, friendly environment there, which I needed that, because I was mentioned before, I was getting bullied a lot in school. So it was kind of my escape being there. And they were all, it was I was the only female too in the wrestling school, so but that brought out the China, the holding your own, girl power. Absolutely. In the ring, and all the guys were very protective and stuff. So it was a really good learning environment, and those were always memories I'll always cherish.
And do you have any mentors from either your school experience or your career?
So I mentioned Chip, so he was always a mentor for me, inside, outside of the ring. If I ever had any problems or questions, he would always be there. And he, the thing about Chip is he always cared so much about the people that were in the ring, and Yeah, so he was old school. So he was taught by Preston Steele and like T.C. Reynolds, and they were all trained by Dominic DeNucci from back in the day. So he had a lot of experience, and I love that like old school. Like it's the little things that matter when you're in the ring, with not just the moves and stuff you do or being safe in the ring, but with telling a story in the ring, connecting with the fans, the crowd, and stuff like that. That's more important than anything. So.
And as you kind of have come through your career and have just rocket shipped, really, what has been kind of one of your most memorable experiences thus far?
Wow. So, when I started wrestling at 13, I traveled. Obviously, I was like underage, so I was still like learning. And once, I was 18 or 19, I suffered my second severe concussion, which was really scary, and my mom was there. It was in the ER and everything, and it was a really scary experience for me. It was during the match, and I blacked out for a couple seconds, and I remember I couldn't like lift my head up for a couple hours, and the doctor that was there was like, yeah, she needs to go to the ER. Like, so that was a really scary time for me because I never wanted to stop wrestling. So after, a long hiatus, was 14 years I took off. I always wanted to go back, but you get that fear in your head, like, can I still do it? Because I tried to like go in the ring a couple times before that just to get some ring rust off, but it's the after effects of your head, because you're injuring your brain, so it's like you roll around and then you start to get really bad vertigo and stuff like that. So it was a scary time, but that 14 years that went by, I had some personal things go on in my life that just led me to the point where it's like, what was the one thing that always made me happy? And that was always wrestling. So the summer of 2021, I made my big return to the world of professional wrestling, and then it's just been crazy, like you mentioned, like awesome experiences, amazing opportunities that I'm very blessed, very, thankful for, so.
Mm-hmm. And as you're kind of, looking back on this whole experience, are there specific times or moments or matches that stick out to you?
So I'll mention like my first match back after 14 years. I'll never forget, because I was on my way to Worcester, Massachusetts, and this drunk driver came out of nowhere, and it was my only car accident, knock on wood, that I've ever had, and I couldn't avoid him, so my life literally flashed before my eyes, my first match back, and the only thing I remember, like, going through, like, my life flashing before my eyes, I'm like, please, God, let me get to my wrestling match, and, like, I don't want to die, kind of, like, that moment, and I remember I was, like, so close to, like, hitting the guardrail, but thank God, I was fine. My car was a little shaken up, but I remember the police officer that did the accident report. He's like, I told him I was going on my way to the match. I'm like, is my tire okay? I need to get to my show, That was the one thing I had on my mind, and I was just so focused because I'd been training, and like that was my big moment. So that was, it sticks out as that was a big moment for me, because when I got there, I had the match of my life, and I remember I was so excited, and like everyone there was super supportive, like after 14 years being away. So that was a great, having that happen to me, and then the car accident, and then still having a match, and still, going in there and chasing after my dream. I'll never forget it.
Wow, what an amazing story and experience.
Yeah.
For sure, my goodness. Now, speaking of matches, any dream opponents?
Oh my gosh, there's so many, right? I mean, just being able to say I had a match on Monday Night Raw with Bianca Belair, Asuka, and Alexa Bliss, like the 3 top female, wrestlers in the world, and having that opportunity. I'll say, she's passed away, but China would have been my dream opponent. But there's so many,
And do you have a favorite opponent, or someone who you are just, have that connection with in the ring?
Oh man, there's so many amazing opponents that I've had, during my journey, my wrestling journey. I will say definitely one of the most kind-hearted person that looked out for me and that just came out of nowhere was Thunder Rosa. So she's actually someone that's a big mentor for me, like inside, outside of the ring. And when she got me that opportunity for AEW, my debut at Arthur Ashe Stadium in front of 20,000 people, I remember I was so excited. She needed an opponent, and she called me, and I was, I never even got to meet her in person yet, so that when I met her at my opponent for that night, and we were the opening match, and I just remember how calm she made me, like, to feel confident in the ring, and she was just really just an amazing person to be in the ring with, because she's so talented, and she made me feel at home when I was there, because I was so nervous being in front of all that crowd, and then being with my mentors, like growing up, like Sting was always my favorite, and then having him ringside, like when we were going over everything before the show, it was just surreal.
Wow, it's amazing to hear you describe that entire experience. With that, what was going through your mind? Like, I know you're excited, but like, I mean, it's gonna be nerves and everything else.
Oh yeah, definitely. Everything, like the fear of like, oh my gosh, it's been so long since I came back in the ring. Am I gonna mess up? Things like that, and just being nervous. I just wanted to like not mess up. You know what I mean? But being there, and then also another huge mentor, it was Dustin Rhodes, was there backstage. Like, you can't get any better than that, right? He was guiding us through the the match and everything, just like making sure like I was comfortable, and like he actually pulled me aside before I went out there, and he's like, "You got this." He's like, "You were born for this," just making me like so sweet, right? I love Dustin. He's amazing. And he's such a big supporter for me. Like, I'm super honored that, we're friends and everything, and he follows. Every time I'm there at AEW, I just give him a big hug.
Oh, for sure. It's amazing that you're able to make those connections. And speaking of connections, do you have connections to any favorite venues or cities?
That's good. Well, my dream is to wrestle in your hometown, of course. So MVP Arena and Albany, New York, where I'm from. It's like 10 minutes away from my hometown, because I used to always go to the wrestling shows growing up. That was like the infamous night when like Stone Cold Steve Austin did the beer bath. I was there for that in the nosebleed. So like having that moment, if I can ever have that, would be like the venue, of course, like your hometown.
And tell us about some of your experiences in AEW.
Oh my gosh! Well, AEW, like that first night at Arthur Ashe Stadium, that was amazing. Getting to meet everybody, and like Matt Hardy was there too, and like I remember he like was super happy to. What he said, "I'll make sure I watch your match," and like everyone was super supportive after that long break I took, and yeah, that was amazing. And just everyone there is so amazing to work with, and everyone's laid back, and everyone wants to support each other there. But yeah, AEW has been amazing.
And we've talked a lot about kind of your past career, but where do you see yourself in 2 years?
I'm hoping signed to WWE or AEW, right? That's the goal. That's been my dream, since I was a kid. So that's definitely the goal. Hopefully less than 2 years, but we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're all rooting for you.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. It means a lot.
Absolutely. And what has been your best experience? I know you've had a lot of them, but what would you say is your crowning best experience thus far?
Oh man, just being able to say I can be on WWE and AEW. That same night was in February during the Kiss Cam for WWE, and I had the match with Serena Deeb on Rampage. That was the same night, and I remember everyone was like, my phone was blowing up. Everyone was so happy and excited for me, because they were comparing it to the legendary Rick Rude, who was on Monday Night Raw and Nitro back then in the day. So that was a huge accomplishment, to be able, all the hard work, all the hustling, and then long nights and sleeping in my car, it's all paid off. Like there's still so much to go, but I'll never forget that night. That was amazing.
Wow, it really was, for sure, for us as well. And you've had a very incredible career thus far. What advice do you have for newcomers?
I would say never give up, work hard. I know that sounds so cliche, but there's been so many hurdles that I've been through, with the injury and things like that, and just personal things in life. But if you put 100% into what you're doing, believe in yourself, always help others. I'm always willing. Anytime that someone has advice, I'm always willing to listen or give advice if I know anything. Knowledge is really good to spread, and always be positive about everything. There can be bad, negative experiences that happen, but as long as you can, somehow, something bad that happens to you, for things that are out of your control, if you can just try and keep push forward and Yeah, I would just say anyone that wants to get into the business, just keep going, keep trying, always look for opportunities, no matter, how far they are or how far, you know what I mean?
That's not just good advice for wrestling, it's good
It's-
advice for
yeah.
life. It really
Yeah,
is.
Yeah, thank you.
No, for sure. And do you have any hobbies outside of wrestling?
I mean, I do work full time. I work at the Attorney General's office for New York State, so I do have a career. Like IT specialist by day. I joke around and say like Spice Ranger by night. That's kind of, but I do like outside of work and wrestling. I mean, I go to the gym. I just put 100% into like what I do. So wrestling right now is like the number 1 priority. So I mean, I do have fun outside. Like I'll hang out with friends and family, but wrestling's definitely like number 1 right now for hobby.
No, and it's great to have your career and your career.
Exactly.
But hopefully you will have a
Yes,
career
yes.
coming up soon. We're all crossing our fingers for
Yes,
you.
thank you. I appreciate it.
And tell us about kind of the promotions and kind of your journey through the promotions.
Okay, so when I came back to wrestling the summer of 2021, I was reached out by Mission Pro Wrestling, which is Thunder Rosa's promotion in Texas, which is amazing. I love everything that she does there. She uplifts women there to chase after their dreams, gives them that opportunity that maybe they wouldn't otherwise have. For me then, it was my first like big promotion, and they have the streaming is a huge thing now with wrestling, where it wasn't back when I used to wrestle. It was VHS tapes. I remember selling on my website and just word of mouth. So now social media, thank God for social media, because that's huge. And I'm always trying to it's so much negativity that you find on social media now. So I always try to be positive and, always try to do that. And so Mission Pro Wrestling is the first opportunity I had. And then I branched out to Immortal Championship Wrestling, which is upstate New York local, where I was the women's champion for 400 something days. So it was a huge accomplishment, and then I got to win the title in my hometown, Schenectady. That was such a heartwarming, experience to have, and all my friends and family were there. That was huge. And I did get the opportunity to work for Miria Canellis' promotion, Women's Wrestling Army. Which is huge, and I was there for the first show at Feet Music Hall, and that was amazing. Maria's amazing. I love what she does for women empowerment. She does behind the scenes, all the work that she's done for Ring of Honor, and it's amazing to be a part of that locker room. And then definitely was a cool experience to be at the building where Shimmer used to run all those shows back in the day, which you can't never say never, but back in the day when I got injured, that was around the time when they were starting to build up. So I was really upset, disappointed that I got injured, because I wanted to wrestle for Shimmer back then. But, things happen for a reason. So here we are now, and then I got to wrestle in that same building for her promotion, which was awesome. So, it's just been amazing, just any opportunity that I can to work and, get better.
And speaking of females, you've been a wrestling fan for your whole life, and you've seen kind of the evolution of women's wrestling. What are your thoughts?
I definitely am so happy that women's wrestling came so far. And now that, you mentioned women's wrestling, I feel like we're at a point now you don't even have to say women's wrestling. They're a wrestler. They're the superstar, which is great. You know what I mean? Yes, please clap. Sure. So going back to when I would watch China and just she broke all those barriers, wrestling the guys and the girls, and now flash forward to today, where the women are main eventing, and just taking over, and it's nice to see that now and be a part of that, because I was always a fan. Even when I was injured, I always watched it, and I loved when they were just around 2016, 17, when they were starting to do the women's revolution, and I would see friends from my locker room that I used to wrestle, Mercedes Martinez was a part of the Mae Young Classic thing, so that was awesome to see her. It's awesome just to have that full circle moment too, of just seeing everyone that are still wrestling. Mercedes sticks out to me, and she's always been a huge mentor, female locker room leader since back then and to today. So it's nice to see all the women that are finally just getting the flowers they deserve, Yeah,
and you really said it best, that they're not women, they're wrestlers.
Yes.
And that, I think, has been the crowning achievement.
Yeah. It took a long time.
Yes, for sure. So I'm going to actually send it out to the audience. Is there any questions?
Limitless and Beyond and all that.
Yeah.
You've had a rare opportunity in working with them in the past and also
Yeah.
the new companies that are here now, working with Tony over at AEW with Vincent. What are the differences between the companies and what did you like or not like about them, and knowing you have to be
Yeah.
political?
Yeah.
still
No, I
trying
know.
to get into them.
Yeah, no, I'm honest. I think that the main difference is there's probably like a bigger, obviously more money, more production with the bigger companies like AEW and WWE. But I would say, with the independent companies, that it's more like tight knit, group because you see the regulars that are there, and it's. But I would say either, every locker room is different, and they're all, from my experiences at WWE and AEW, like everyone's just super supportive of each other. They want to, they'll watch each other's matches, give feedback and things like that. So that's always on the indie level too. So, yeah, I would say definitely maybe like as far as like the differences is probably like production. They have bigger production, TV, national TV and stuff like that.
Any other questions?
If nobody else does,
Go ahead, yeah.
You
Yeah.
worked with Serena, and she
Yes.
also had a similar career to you, where she took a long time off,
Yeah.
went into training, then came back into the ring, and she's amazing in the ring. Your
Yeah.
matches with her are amazing. So
Oh, thank you.
what's it like working with her?
So I'm glad you said that. Serena Deeb, that was, the big Rampage match that we had. She's amazing to work with and such a workhorse. She's like, we're very similar where I mentioned China a lot, but like that was one of her heroes too growing up because we're around the same age. And so China was a big influence on her. And just, I love that she's like very technical in the ring and she likes, like we mentioned before, like she wants to be known as a wrestler, not a women's wrestler. So a lot of her style is like very like Bret Hart, kind of technical stuff. And I respect that. And so like when I had the opportunity to wrestle on Rampage, she came to my home promotion for ICW and we had an amazing match there. And that was so, I remember just being so happy that she came, to do that for me and just, have that opportunity to learn more and, get her style in the ring. So we did great. We have great chemistry. She's an amazing person. I love Serena.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
Don't be afraid.
You can keep going.
Right? I get it.
No. Well, thank you all for joining today, and Kayla, best of luck to you
I appreciate it.
in your career, and you've done amazing so far, and we can't wait to see where you go next.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you all
Yes.
for listening, and thank you all for being here tonight. Appreciate it. Thank you.